Good evening, everyone. I'm Riley King, and welcome to my evening news report right here on the Riley King Network. Let's begin. Take a look at this photo right behind me. This is Whittemore Center at UNH. State lawmakers to resume session June 11th at UNH Whittemore Center, State House. To ensure safety, House Senate to meet outside of their chambers for first time since Civil War. The 24-member Senate will meet at the 400-seat Representatives Hall at the State House. And the House, which currently has 394 members, will meet at the Whittemore Center at the University of New Hampshire in Durham. In a unique and historic way, the legislature will be back in session beginning June 11th, taking significant steps to adapt to the COVID-19 pandemic, House Speaker Steve Shitloff and Senate President Donna Saucy announced today. The House and Senate will be meeting outside of their respective chambers for the first time since the Civil War, the two leaders said. The lawmakers last met at the State House in their respective chambers March 12th, and the House into the early hours of the morning of March 13th, just as the coronavirus outbreak was becoming an emergency. In recent weeks, there have been growing calls for the legislature to find a way to meet again. Shitloff said in an interview that on the advice of two public health physicians at the State Department of Health and Human Services, the plans were laid. The speaker said the physicians gave great medical advice on the optimal way to meet safely. They were consulted as recently Friday, when Shitloff said he received messages of concern from several members with respiratory conditions who said it was impossible for them to wear masks. He said that while masks will be mandated at the Whittemore Center, for those who are unable to wear masks, shields will be made available. Shitloff also credited Terry Paff, Chief Operating Officer of the legislature, with a major role in organizing the session. Shitloff said that with hundreds of bills already passed by the Senate requiring action by the House, he intends to work with the leaders of both parties to prioritize bill that will be taken up on June 11th in future sessions. Several House committees and the Joint Legislative Fiscal Committee have been meeting remotely for several weeks, said House Majority Office spokesperson. Those meetings will continue in a remote format, he said. Shitloff and Saucy said, "We understand it is important for the legislature to resume session to complete the work that the people of New Hampshire elected us to do, as well as provide important checks and balances to the state government during this crisis." This is a photo of Representatives Hall, what it looks like. All jammed packed. That's why they are meeting at Whittemore Center on UNH, where more space and more room, so they're not all squished in and jammed packed. With the Democratic-controlled legislature not meeting, Republican Governor Chris Sununu and his team have been working on the disbursements of federal COVID-19 relief funds, even as Democrat lawmakers have sued, seeking to have their joint legislative fiscal committee have the final word in the process. We are committed to returning to a manner that ensures public access to the process and, above all, adheres to public health recommendations, which is why when the House and Senate come back into session next month, we will be meeting outside of our respective chambers for the first time since the Civil War, Shitloff and Saucy said. We understand for many of you that coming to a House session in the middle of COVID-19 pandemic can be frightening, Shitloff wrote in a weekly House calendar. We need a place that is large enough to allow us to socially distance while not being so large as to create its own logistical problems, wrote Shitloff. He wrote that each House member will have his or her temperature taken prior to entering the Whittemore Center, and in keeping with UNH guidelines, each member will be given an N95 mask. He also warned that the Whittemore Center, which is the UNH hockey arena, can be slippery in spots, so for your safety, please wear soft, solid shoes. In addition, he wrote, firearms are not allowed on the campus. Patrons bickering. The announcement did not come without a smattering of patrons bickering. After Shitloff announced that voting will be conducted with newly purchased remote voting tablets to be installed by the private firm International Roll Call, House Republican leader Richard Hinch issued a statement calling into question the need for what he called the electric voting gizmo. Hinch cited a May 5th memo from PAFIF to the House and Senate leadership, in which PAFIF wrote that expense incurred to that point as a result of pandemic totaled nearly $73,000. Patliff wrote that at the time he anticipated additional expenditures of $200,000 for rental of venue space, purchase of remote voting tablets, contracting expense with IRC to stand up with remote voting, and sound equipment rental. He wrote that the expenses related to COVID-19 will be submitted to the governor's office for a reimbursement through Federal CARES Act fund. I agree that the House should get back to work, Hinchrit said in a statement, but this purpose budget shows poor judgment given the tough times we are facing. We're asking state and local governments to tighten their belts as we deal with revenue losses due to this crisis and have businesses, organizations, and families that need assistance, Hinchrit said. Spending in excess of $200,000 on handheld voting devices and other equipment for legislature intends of spending those dollars where it's really needed seems intensive, to say the least. The House operated for a century without any electronic voting gizmo, and spending this amount at this time is blasting wasteful, considering CARES Act money could go somewhere where it is needed more. We need to get back to work. We need to pressure the safest and most economical way to do people's business, not flawless, Hinchrit wrote. Shitloff responded in a statement. These devices will be used to finish out this session and then can be used again should the House need to hold another remote legislative session for any reason or future emergency. In addition, they can be configured to be used in committees, partially allowing the House to update committee votes in real time. This system also ties directly into our present voting system, so Granite Staters who wish to know how their representatives are voting can still see that information in real time, preserving the transparency of our proceedings. And Shitloff said the cost of these devices should be covered as a COVID-19 related expenses under the CARES Act and not state money should be required. House Republican leadership has been kept appraised of this process from the beginning, and I am frankly disappointed to see them try to politicalize the House attempts to finish the people's work, Shitloff said. House Majority Leader Doug Lee added that spending a tiny fraction of nearly $2 billion of CARES Act funds received by the state to allow safe legislative session is perfectly reasonable. The Republican leader should cool off and take a walk outside, but be sure to wear a mask to protect the health of himself and others, Lee said. And that is it for my evening news report right here on the Riley King Network. Thank you for watching. Have a great evening, and goodbye.